Good morning. This is a meeting of the Revenue and Fixed Cost Committee. It is October 21st at 9:07 a.m. And we did have a quorum, but now I think we don't because we have one member with technical issues, so they will be right back. But we will start the meeting anyway. And we are here today to discuss our first quarter revenues. As you may remember, we had Donovan, you good now? Can you hear us? We had a meeting between MOA between the schools and the town at the end of last year's budget season, where we had a situation where we were trying to figure out what to do if we saw a shortfall in this year's revenues. We were able to get an MOU signed that required us to have this meeting and before we went forward with any new initiatives in the fiscal year 21 budget. So while Donovan's getting settled and trying to get in, it's one of those days here. I think it's a Wednesday. That's a Monday, unfortunately. We're doing our best. So we'll give him a second to get called in.
So is Donovan the other finance committee member?
He is. He is our new member to our finance committee, and we are so excited to have him.
Okay, I'm just
and
for
this
the
is
minute.
Sasha Weinrich for the record.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it for the minute. So he's taking Kevin's place. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. We vote on our people volunteer every year. So he is the second. Yep.
Got it.
I'm the second finance committee member.
You good, Donovan?
Yep, I'm here now. I'm listening.
Okay. So I think what I'm going to do, Lynn had circulated some fiscal year 21 year-to-date general fund revenue summaries. Did you all receive that, or would you like me to share it on my screen?
I have it.
I received that.
Yep.
Okay. And so basically, if you take a look at the first sheet, you'll see that our revenues really are where we would expect them to be at this time. There was a few notable differences. Property taxes have increased by almost $1 million, which is in line with what you would expect from one fiscal year to the next. Our motor vehicle excise tax is up by about $9,000. Other excise is down by about $35,000, and that is due to a decrease in meals tax, which is actually probably higher than I expected. I thought we would have more of a deficit in the meals tax than we're actually showing. But I think with takeout and the outside dining being open, we were able to make up some of that room. I know I certainly have helped with the amount of takeout that I've been ordering. And so I think that we're happy to see that in line of where it should be. Refuse is down a little bit, but we expect that will get back up. And we do know that in fiscal year 20, we had a June payment that was unusual. So it is more in line with where we would be. Fees are down, but that's because last year in fiscal year 20, we had a one-time planning board fee of $540,000. That was an unusual revenue. So that kind of offsets this a little bit. So fees are really only down by about $40,000. And we do have quite a few large projects that I think will be coming forward fairly soon. Medicaid reimbursements are up. Library revenue is down by $655 due to the library being closed for an extended period of time. The recreation fees are down by $28,000, and that's due to the pond closure. So over the summer, if you remember, we had some bacteria issues in the pond, which required us to do refunds due to the amount of time that it was down. We do not expect that to be an issue next year. And I'm sure we'll make up some of this at the end of the fiscal year. We have installed an aeration system over the last week or so, and we have a dog that's running the pond now in order to keep the geese away. So both of those should end that problem moving forward. Our investment income is, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's phenomenal.
We're pretty excited about it. The aeration system will be, I think, a huge help. I wanted to put a fake coyote out there, but I got overruled by letting the dog run the the pond. So, we think it's going to solve the problems in the long run, which is good. Investment income is down, but we do expect to meet our budget. As you remember, our investment rates were really high for a couple of years. We did see that kind of tamper back down to where it would be more expected to be due to COVID, but we think we'll start seeing that go back up. The intergovernmental state aid is down a little bit, but that's because of the veterans benefits, which we collected a little bit later. It also was because the state aid budget had not been completed. We do know that for the first quarter, we basically were in essence level funded. However, the governor's budget has just come out, and obviously that is subject to change, but it does basically keep us whole from fiscal year 20 with a slight increase. And the good news about that is that we use fiscal year 20's number as our number when we created the budget last year. So we have safeguards in place for that. So that's really good news. The inter-fund transfers is down by 11,000, which we would expect because, hey, Superintendent, how are you? No problem. We would expect because we did not have as many transfers from the Stevens estate. So if you remember correctly, we did the Stevens estate enterprise fund budget a little bit differently this year in order to try to help them get through fiscal year 21. And we removed the employee benefits from their budget. So we are not having that indirect cost transfer. And so that's going to cause our interfund transfers to be lower. However, we did plan for that. So we know that that's there. And then we some miracle, had some money freed up from a Columbia fund, Columbia Gas Fund this year. DOR had told us that we had kept the money in the account for as long as we possibly could, and that is going to be transferred over to the general fund. So in a year where we needed it most, we had a one-time miscellaneous non-recurring revenue of $735,000. So that's huge for us. And so that kind of puts us at $1.4 million more than where we expected to be, or where we should be. So we're in good shape for fiscal year 21 at this point. So if you remember correctly, what the MOU basically required us to do was to review the first quarter's revenues, and that the Revenue and Fixed Cost Committee would report out to both the selectmen and the school committee on the status of those revenues. And that report would basically allow us to start to move forward with some of the new initiatives. And the reason that we did that was twofold, if you remember. One was that we were concerned that revenues wouldn't be where they should be, which they are. And if they weren't, then we would not move forward with the new initiatives at all. But second, it gave us cost savings in the first quarter, right? So say, for instance, we were going to hire a new position as the new initiative, and it was a $100,000 position, right? We would save $25,000 by not filling it until the first quarter ended. And so it gave us additional savings and an additional cushion just in case revenues weren't where they're supposed to be.
So this is Sasha Weinrich. I have a couple of questions. So are the new initiatives, some of those new initiatives, are they still needed? So should we expect to see that those new initiatives, specifically positions, would be filled at this point? Or has that been adjusted because of the needs of COVID? You know, I think probably this relates much more to the schools than the municipal side of things. And kind of if you could just talk about how that has shifted or changed and what we can anticipate from a cost perspective there.
On the town end, we have no changes to our need. We only had two really position changes. One was a part-time position for housing, which we need more than ever, really. And that person would namely be working on 40Bs right now, doing analysis of our numbers, helping us figure out where we need to be in order to get to our 10% threshold with the new projects that we have coming on and the new projects that we have proposed. Very complicated, a complicated calculation, and I want to make sure that we have that ready and in place. The other major change for us is the positions at the fire department. It's the promotions, and we've already posted for those and ready to move forward on those as soon as we can. We have a list that's going to expire soon, so we want to make through civil service. We want to make sure that we act on it. Right? Yeah. Yeah, and we have a part-time youth and rec person who obviously they're open and kind of facing more than ever before. So we're ready to move forward with all of ours. Other than that, it's small capital within the operating, and you know, it's not anything that's phasing, I think.
Okay.
And from the school perspective, we're really focused on meeting COVID-driven needs. So, you know, based on the positions that we had, some of the COVID-driven needs we had to already hire in special education, in particular, because of compensatory services and IEPs for students. So, you know, and on the online academy. So we have had to, you know, use some of the COVID money that we've got in order to operate the school system.
So basically what it comes down to is the funding that we're using this year that was kind of set aside for new initiatives, as they're called, we're addressing the COVID-driven needs. So those are more one-time expenses that are going to be in place only for this year, we hope. And then we would have that money in the budget for these new initiatives, but we don't anticipate many of those until things are, you know, cleared up, so to speak.
And a perfect example of that would be the 0.5 vice principal. It was desperately needed, but for example, I pulled it from one school to put it at the school that had the highest need, and that's, you know, part of our plan, strategic plan, our 5-year plan. So we've been creative. So, you know, right now we're really focused on the COVID needs.
And I think what people have to understand is that we have been pretty much planning to exhaust all of the funding that's available for COVID funding through the CARES Act and the grant that we got. But that only, in both those cases, that only carries us through December 31st. So all of those other positions that we need in place for COVID are going to have to be covered from the general fund budget after December 31st until the end of the year.
So Jim, or Greg as well, do you guys have a breakdown of that we can see and understand? So basically, you know, who has been hired and those salaries or costs have been allocated to the CARES Act funding, and then what we should expect that we'll need to cover out of the operating budget or wherever we have to, you know, after December 31st, and then the kind of maybe new initiatives in addition to that we would, you anticipate potentially having to put in place?
So earlier, Sasha, when you mentioned having us at a upcoming finance committee meeting, that's exactly what I thought it would be.
Okay.
And that's what I thought it would be, because I thought we were going to the finance committee at some point, so.
Well, perfect. We're all on the same page, Greg. Okay. Donovan, do you have any additional questions that you?
No, that last one that you had was what I was going to bring up, so I appreciate you doing that. No, I think I'm pretty good. I have a full understanding.
Okay. And Melissa, in terms of the, like, what these costs look like, obviously, you know, I haven't seen them. I'm sure you guys look at them all the time and weekly basis together, but do you already have you started figuring out or formulating how, or it's kind of in the MOU, right? We would then, if we need to, where we would then get those funds?
Yep, so
We
it
just
is pretty much
follow
spelled out in the MOU, except that we did not know what free cash should be certified at that point when we created the MOU, right? And so we have, you know, it's an interesting situation. So where we would go basically is we would start with the finance committee, a reserve fund. I will say that there is every indication, no one's going to want to hear this, that it's going to be a bad winter. So, you know, we'll recognize that as we move forward, but all signs point to snow at this point. So we would start there.
We were too lucky last year, right?
I know it's not going to be like last year. So we would start there with obviously snow first, and those types of costs, but then for these one-time expenses that are really COVID related and would be 1 year or 2 year type costs, which is what we have reserves for in the first place. I would suggest starting with free cash. We were certified at over $12 million. We may not do everything from free cash, right? But we would certainly start there. And then our second bucket would be stabilization funding. Both appropriate uses for these one-time type expenses. And so I have said to the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, and we've had these conversations, this is not the year to worry about spending, right? This is the year to make sure that we have what we need in order to be successful, and safe and healthy and operating. And so we'll work together with the finance director on making sure that we have what we need and that we have a funding plan in place at town meeting.
And I would just say,
Okay.
we really appreciate the cooperation and collaboration with Melissa. We're one of the few districts that attend school. Most districts are on a hybrid model, but they haven't been to school yet. They're completely remote. And there's very few that are in, and the collaboration to get school up and running with Melissa was really amazing and allowed us to be able to do what we're doing.
Had a lot of good teamwork for the last 8 months for sure. So much appreciated.
Awesome. Okay. Is there anything else Melissa, that we need to talk about, or?
I don't think there's anything else that is pressing or that is relevant as far as the revenues go. I think that, there could be a vote for the fixed cost committee to report out to the selectmen and school committee that the revenues for the first quarter are in line as expected, and that the revenue and fixed cost committee supports moving forward with new initiatives as needed.
I would second that.
There you go.
Okay. Knowing that we will need to, work through the process of the MOU, I think it'd be important to highlight that as well, so that the general public is well aware of the fact that, we are going to have to most likely, take from free cash if, or that we anticipate that, and we are comfortable doing that at this point, so we can address the needs of our community, essentially, right? That's what we're saying.
And
So,
we
although,
may
yes,
see additional funding, right? We don't know yet.
So what is that? What are you hearing about that? Either, any
So,
of you work.
right, what basically is happening is that we're applying for CARES Act funding. Like, we just had an application due. We're going to have to supplement each month coming through December 31st. What basically is happening is that we're applying, and then they're sending back what is CARES Act reimbursable and what they actually think should be put on FEMA, right? So, and that's kind of, a balancing act, right? And then what CARES Act sends back to us, we then apply to for FEMA. The issue with FEMA is that FEMA takes like 2 years to get reimbursed. So, we just got a reimbursement for a windstorm that was 2 years ago, right? So, and we recognize that and we know that. And since it's a state of emergency, if needed, and we may find that it is needed as the year goes on, we do have the opportunity to petition DOR to go into the red in our accounts, right? And that would allow us to continue spending in the way that we are spending once that CARES Act funding goes away, right, December 31st. But there's another call today. There's been a lot of conversation about, what's next? How do we handle December 31st and beyond when things haven't changed, right? And so I think the state is hearing that, the federal government is hearing that, and I'm hopeful that we'll see supplemental funding beyond that.
Okay. All right, great.
Sasha, I have a question.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Good.
I saw
Thank you. Very, very good. Great. The baby is 9 weeks. 9 weeks old.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
He's adorable. We got to see him the other day.
Yes, we went to the grand opening of the Celebration Enthusiasts on Main Street. Kaylee LaFlemme, who I grew up with, opened her own store. We went down outside to the grand opening, and Melissa and Dee were there, so they got to see the baby.
He's adorable.
Awesome.
And I got to go shopping, so.
Thank you for asking. Yeah, and if you're for really great party goods or anything, you know, plugs for Kaylee's new shop. It's awesome. Really great to see a small business opening up in the middle of a pandemic, and she's doing great. So it's wonderful to see. So, all right.
So I have one question. Do we need to do any type of official motion coming out of this meeting?
Yeah, so I don't know if you grabbed the motion I made, and I can't actually make it, so it has to be either Greg, Donovan, or Sasha. Because I don't think I'm ex officio, so I can't vote. So if one of you wanted to move it, someone else could second it,
Yeah.
and then I think there's 3 voting members here.
All right. So I move that we recommend a report be given to the school committee and the board of line. Revenues for FY21 are currently in line with projections, and that we recommend continuing to operate as we are currently and include new initiatives as needed, with the understanding that we may need to utilize additional funding as outlined in the MOU.
I would second that. Again.
Seconded by Donovan. All those in favor?
Aye.
So that was Superintendent Gilligan, Donovan O'Connell from the Finance Committee, myself, Sasha Weiner from the Finance Committee, and James Mealy, the Assistant Superintendent. So the motion is passed.
Thanks, everybody.
Got it.
I appreciate that. And then if we
Thank
have no
you.
other business, which I don't think we do, we can entertain a motion to adjourn, which is always my favorite, and then go from there.
You please. And Melissa, when that goes out, could you CC the committee?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I would move to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Second.
I second that.
Oh, do I have a second? Sorry, I'm moving ahead. All right, and everyone is in favor. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.